Today's video is brought to you by StoryboardThat.com. Please visit teachercast.net/StoryboardThat for a limited time offer. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Podcast. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today for episode 117. We have a great show. Today, we're going to be talking all about Edcamps, free unconferences for you and your community. We're going to be talking to the new director of the Edcamp Foundation, Miss Hadley Ferguson, and we have some amazing guests on the show today to talk about Edcamps. What is an Edcamp? Why do we have Edcamps? How do you start an Edcamp? And more importantly, how do you fund an Edcamp? There's, of course, several ways that you can connect with us here on TeacherCast each and every week. You can find us on Twitter at TeacherCast. Leave us a voicemail at teachercast.net/voicemail. Subscribe to this audio and video show over at teachercast.net/iTunes and teachercast.net/YouTube. And if you have any suggestions for our show or would like to be a guest yourself, you can reach out at feedback@teachercast.net. Now, Edcamps is not a stranger to TeacherCast. We've done a few amazing shows, but it's been a while since we've really approached the Edcamp. In New Jersey, we have a great event coming up pretty soon called Edcamp South Jersey, and it's an amazing thing because Edcamps like to spring out of other Edcamps. In fact, if you go over to their website, edcamp.org, you can find a Prezi that was created. Let me see if I can bring this up here. But they did a Prezi basically of how Edcamps have come out of each other called the Edcamp Family Tree. And it's an amazing, amazing Prezi, which basically starts with how it started with Edcamp Philly, and then that sprung a few more, and then that sprung a few more. See, we just got done doing Edcamp New Jersey Part 3, and then out of that, I know, in New Jersey at least, we've sprung out a few more Edcamps. But enough about the great stuff that's happening in New Jersey. I want to bring on the director of the Edcamp Foundation, the new director of the Edcamp Foundation, Miss Hadley Ferguson. Hadley, how are you today? Welcome to the TeacherCast Podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. It's great to be here. It is an amazing thing to have left the classroom after decades and be the face of the Edcamp Foundation. And I get to stand on the shoulders of thousands and thousands of organizers around the country and around the world who have brought this form of professional development to teachers everywhere. And we are now in all 50 states. We're in 22 countries around the world. People are totally energized by spending time talking to each other. Teachers are being able to move beyond just sitting and getting professional development and are being able to participate themselves and share and collaborate. It's been an amazing growth of a movement.
I love this idea of teachers sharing and collaborating, and that is why I am so proud that we have not only an Edcamp organizer, but a teacher herself on today. I want to bring on Shannon. Shannon, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How are you?
Doing well, and you are an educator, but you're also an Edcamp organizer. What Edcamps have you organized?
Yes, so I am from Baltimore. I'm a middle school dean of students and drama teacher at the Bryn Mawr School, which is an independent school in Baltimore. We started Edcamp Baltimore 3 years ago, so this year will be our fourth Edcamp Baltimore. Born out of a couple of Edcamps, so it's hard to pin us on the family tree. My first Edcamp, I want to say, was Edcamp Social Studies, which is kind of funny, being that I am in no way a social studies teacher. But it was in Philly and kind of the first one that I had heard about. Also have helped organize Edcamp independent schools in the past, Edcamp Maryland, which just happened in February, which was at the Maryland State Department of Education. Edcamp Arlington, and I'm a good friend of Edcamp Metro DC, which did come out of, they literally sat down in our I want to say our first Edcamp Baltimore at a table during lunch and created Edcamp Metro DC. So exactly what you were talking about, Jeff. Edcamps bring on Edcamps because teachers believe in them and love them and want that time to collaborate and do amazing things when they get that time to collaborate.
Again, Hadley, I have to say, it goes back to this word collaboration. And I'm seeing this trend in education where the word collaboration is also equaling the word fun. Teachers loving to get together. And it wasn't so long ago that teachers were hating professional development, being in a auditorium and you get this sage on a stage with 300 slides. And now professional development, at least what I can understand in Shannon's case here, has become an addiction. And that's all because of the Edcamp model and this whole unconference movement. Now, Hadley, I said I have one canned question for you. What is the state of the Edcamp in 2015?
Edcamp could not be better than it is right now. We are still, we just continue to grow exponentially. And teachers, every group of teachers that organizes an Edcamp spurs another group to go and have the next one. And I think that we have shifted from when I started in the classroom, where you sort of kept your file cabinet locked of your secrets that you used with your students. It's now about, let me share what my best practices, let me learn your best practices. And that is so energizing and empowering for teachers that it has, I think that's really at the root of it, that a teacher who has never experienced this kind of learning comes to an Edcamp and suddenly finds that they have connections with other teachers, that they're learning and they're growing. They have things to take back in their classrooms. And I don't think there's a teacher out there that doesn't want to make what happens in their classroom better. And if they can go and spend a Saturday talking to other teachers and learning and growing and coming up with fresh ideas, then they just want to go back in the classroom and do it, and they want to make that kind of experience available for other teachers.
Mm-hmm. And Jeff, one of the cool things I've noticed is you know, I think that we can often feel isolated in our world, and especially, you know, we always talk about public-private partnerships and making sure that we're working together as educators and not separately in our different kind of domains, especially between independent schools and public schools. And it's been so amazing for me to, you know, think back to Edcamp Baltimore when you came, and, you know, from New Jersey, public school teacher, I had never met you, and we communicated via Twitter, and you came down and you broadcast and you interacted with us, and you just are able to, because people are Edcamp addicts, meet people from all over. You know, how would I have met, you know, Meredith Martin? How would I have met, you know, educators from North Carolina and from Chicago and from everywhere that I've met educators except at an Edcamp? You know, there are conferences and things like that that happen, but they're often so big and so grand at that scale that it's hard to get those face-to-face interactions, and Edcamps, you know, allow that to happen in a way that you learn things that you didn't even know you didn't know.
You know, Hadley, let's go back to the beginning here. Your website, which I'd like to, of course, share with everybody, is edcamp.org. And tell us a little bit about what we can find over here on edcamp.org.
Well, you can find what's the latest thing that's happening. So right now you'll see that information about the Edcamp that's going to be at the Department of Ed. You can see our new program of Edcamp in a Box. But up at the top, you can also find links for how to organize and how to connect with us and what it means to be an Edcamp. And so all of it's a really good landing place for starting to organize an Edcamp and then just finding out what's going on in the larger Edcamp world.
Well, let's start with that. Edcamp originated, are we at 4 years ago at this point?
It will be 5 years this May. We're about to, Edcamp Philly is about to be, we're about to have the 6th Edcamp Philly and be officially 5 years old.
That is amazing. And it all started with something called Bar Camp.
It started with Bar Camp. It was a very amusing story in that a number of people, a couple of educators had heard about Bar Camp, which was for computer geeks, basically, to get together and share their ideas. And they went and the educators connected and put on a session about using technology in education. And they then went and were talking about having an Edcamp based on that model. And I happened to be online on Twitter and knew all of the people who were connecting and posting out that they wanted to be doing this conference. And I tweeted in and said, I want to be part of this. And so we put together the first Edcamp Philly, not knowing, and it was really quite an amazing sort of, you put it out on social media, but will anybody come? And we got to Drexel, which is where we had the first one, and sort of looked at each other, and here we had this open board and a pile of t-shirts, and we're just sitting there hoping that somebody would show up, because it was an absolutely spectacularly beautiful spring day. And sure enough, teachers started coming and getting excited about the whole idea of building sessions. And today, teachers come and are much more prepared to build a session. But we had, I think it was almost 2 hours for coffee and bagels for people just to talk, because we wanted them to generate what did they want to be talking about in larger sessions. And so slowly but surely, the session board got built, and people became so excited and energized by this way of being able to talk together and share and have the rule of 2 feet that, you know, if it wasn't meeting your needs, go to the next room, because we respect your time. And we want you to learn and grow and leave this time feeling like it was a Saturday well spent. And they left, and before we knew it, Edcamp New York, because some people from New York had heard about it and came down, Edcamp New York was going on, and then through Twitter and social media it went out, and soon we had Edcamps popping up all over the country.
I think the history of this is simply amazing. And people ask the question, how do you start an Edcamp? How does this work? And it's nice to know here, Hadley, that all you need for an Edcamp is a bunch of t-shirts, and people will be here.
You don't even need t-shirts.
Oh, okay.
We had t-shirts, but these days I would recommend just don't even bother getting caught up in the swag and the t-shirts. I think the most important thing to have is coffee in the morning. And after coffee in the morning, I think you're pretty well set, because it's really about the conversation. It's not about the swag so much.
Talk to us about that. That is something that I think a lot of people don't seem to understand, the word conversation. Quite often at times you go up and you see people giving presentations, and they have their slide decks, and I go, not an Edcamp. Like, Edcamp is about, like, let's just sit down. I know Kevin Jarrett usually tells me, look, if you don't know something, then that's the person that needs to be leading the Edcamp conversation. One of my favorite Edcamps was Edcamp Steam. And as a music teacher, I just put up there, what does orchestra have to do with STEAM? And next thing I know, I'm in a room full of 15 people. I got music people from Drexel and orchestra teachers from all over. And we basically looked and said, I don't know. But within the hour, we came up with some really amazing ways to integrate, science, technology into our music classes. Talk to us about the power of the conversation.
Well, I think that some of the most powerful Edcamp sessions come from those questions, that rather than people coming as you would to a formal conference where you're going to be presenting, that you're coming with your questions. How do I teach digital reading? Or what does music have to do with STEAM? And then have people get together to talk about those, to wrestle with our challenges as much as to sort of, I'm the authority, because we're really not looking for authorities at Edcamp. We're looking for colleagues. We're looking for people to walk alongside and have those conversations and ask those questions.
Mm-hmm. And I think you have to be comfortable in silence too sometimes. And that's scary in a professional development setting where it's like, all right, we're just going to sit here and think for a second. Cool. Because that's, it's okay. You're asking questions and you're digesting information and you're thinking about things, and it's okay if someone's not speaking for a moment. And it's okay if you have no idea what you even wanted to say when you walked into the room. It's, you settle in the silence and you let the conversation go where it needs to go, or divert if it needs to divert, or go from point A to point Z and not know how you got there.
One of the things that people often talk about is how to put on a successful Edcamp. And looking back at the last 3 years with Edcamp New Jersey, we started with 110 people, I think was our first one. Then we moved up to like 240 people. And our last one, I think we had like 800 registered, and we came in at about 420. And Kevin, again, always seems to tell us that there's a 50% drop off in the numbers. I've always contributed the success of Edcamp New Jersey to the fact that there is about 20 people on the committee, teachers, admins, superintendents, coaches, you name it. There is no rank and file to what Edcamp New Jersey. It's reach, and that's really been the success here. You know somebody, I know somebody, this person knows this company, and they can provide the t-shirts. And then there's also people that really want to try to make an Edcamp, and they find they're by themselves. What advice can you give, or where on the foundation website, perhaps, can an organizer of an Edcamp go to look for information? And what support does the Edcamp Foundation give that teacher that really wants to make a difference and create a conference?
Well, the first thing is to connect with the Foundation Partnership Program, which is you can connect on the website in the How to Organize. That will link you to. We have a whole collection of experienced organizers who will walk you through the process of organizing an Edcamp. It can be done by one person. I wouldn't recommend it if you can, corral in some other people to help you to do it, simply because it's just more fun to do it with other people, to not sort of think of the challenges and tackle them by yourself.
Hadley, can I put in for 1 second, just because I have a good story about that? In that Edcamp Baltimore formed because Chris Schreiber and I were at a different PD session for, I don't even remember, something digital art or whatever. We had recognized each other because of Twitter. Walked up to one another, started a conversation, and one of us had mentioned Edcamp, and we're like, it's kind of an interesting idea. We should do one of those. And so literally, it's reaching out to your Twitter friends, reaching out to a teacher at your school, reaching out to someone that you meet at a random PD session, and talking to them. It's really easy, I think, to find a partner in crime, and I agree with Hadley, doing it alone is not nearly as much fun as doing it with someone else. And Chris and I have become friends for life now, and it was just because I recognized her face. And CC Schreiber is what I called her. I was like, I don't even know your real name.
I know one of the things that really got me about doing Edcamp Baltimore a couple years ago when I went down is it wasn't just Edcamp Baltimore. I remember, Shannon, we actually did a session where I had a panel in front of me, and then we also, I believe, did a Google Hangout with Minnesota at the time. And so it's not... It turned from educators working together for one event to now you've got multiple Edcamps working together to really create an experience. And maybe you can help me fill in the blanks here. I know Joe Mazza right now is working with Edcamp Leadership, where he's trying to get all these satellites. Could you give us a little bit of that story? I really don't know all the details on that one.
I don't know all the details, but I know that Joe is working. I think it may be 6 now locations where there's going to be on one day an Edcamp leadership, and sort of cross-pollination between them, I think, is part of Joe's goal, is that you would have a Edcamp leadership in Philadelphia, and that would draw a crowd, but then that crowd would also be connecting with, I know there's a leadership in Southern California and one in Chicago, and so that all of those people would be connecting at the same time.
One of the big things that I've really admired about Edcamps is again, the ability to help each other. The year that I went down to Baltimore, which I guess was 2 years ago, Shannon, was the year that
was our first year.
Right.
I think it was 2012.
But that was the year that the hurricane hit.
Yeah.
And we were reaching out to help educators around the state of New Jersey, and we put out to Edcamps across, would you guys be able to help us out, help our teachers, help our fellow, all these different things. And, I had already signed up to go down and participate in Edcamp Baltimore. What I didn't realize is that I was coming back up the turnpike with a car full of pens, pencils, backpacks, you name it. But there was a somebody raided Staples essentially and put it in my back, put it in the back of my car. And just being at Edcamp, New Jersey, and seeing, you know, sometimes canned food does it, sometimes pens and pencils do it, but we were able to donate so many educational supplies to schools and more importantly, students across the region of New Jersey that were devastated by the hurricane. It was really, really a neat thing. I mean, talk to us a little bit, Hadley, here about what is the Edcamp Spirit?
I think the Edcamp Spirit goes right back to this whole idea of collaboration, of working together, of not being isolated, but instead seeing yourself part of a network. And that for a lot of us, that's a network that started in the digital realm. But part of the power of Edcamp is that you then get to meet these people face to face, and you get to have this sort of blended experience where you see them online, but you also see them face to face, and then you see them back online. And so when you hear about teachers who you might know digitally who are in need, there's no doubt but that you want to be reaching out and helping those people. And I think that that's at the root of the Edcamp Spirit, is that I am learning something new and I want to share it and I want to pass it on. And that then I get things back, I pass things along. It's a very giving environment where we're all, I mean, it really is interconnected and interwoven.
I think that's what makes people addicts, is that whole thing, is the meeting people you've seen digitally face to face. It makes those relationships so much more rich, but also the idea that it's like gift giving. You know that it's better to give than receive in this type of environment in a way that really makes sense, and you don't care if you receive, but it's great when you do, but it feels good to give, and it feels good to kind of see where your gift goes.
Yeah.
As a teacher, it is very, very intimidating to be going to a professional development event, and to the right of you is a principal. To the left of you may be a superintendent. And so there's a lot of teachers that are kind of hesitant to speak up and maybe participate the way that they should. Should we be worried about that? When you go to an Edcamp and it's a Saturday and you're all there on your own time, is there such thing as rank and file, or should we just accept the fact that we're all there to help each other?
I think one of the amazing parts about an Edcamp is that you get the public schools, you get the charter schools, you get parochial schools, independent schools, you get a whole mix. So you might, in the midst of that, see your superintendent, but you're also seeing a whole collection of people from all different walks of life. And I think that that's the richness that comes, is that we're not all coming from just our school or our district. You end up coming from all these different areas. And I think that any administrator, a superintendent who's showing up in an Edcamp, you're probably going to experience in a totally different way than you would in a standard PD. That those people are stepping outside their comfort zone, which is I'm the authority, and coming to learn with their teachers. So I think that initially it might feel intimidating, but I think in the long run, what we found is that those administrators become impassioned about this kind of learning.
What advice do you have for that teacher that goes to an Edcamp and gets so fired up for this new way of thinking and new way of learning, and then on Monday, you know what happens on Monday? They go back and the copy machine doesn't work. The network is blocked this great website that you've just done a smackdown on. And suddenly within the first half an hour of Monday morning, you're back into the grind. And maybe that's where the addict comes from. You just want to get back to that environment where you can be open and free and honest. But now you've got that, okay, I'm on a Windows network and I can't play with Prezi because it doesn't. what advice do you have for this? Because, there's two types of teachers. There's the teacher that's gung-ho, I really want this. And then there's the teacher that is really frustrated with the Edcamp model because it doesn't work, because my school district doesn't believe in this, accept this, support this. I don't have the infrastructure. Sure, it's easy for Hadley to come out and say that she can do these great things, but I don't have those computers in my classroom. Hadley, talk to us about this.
Well, I think that one of the things is to maintain connections digitally, that, not letting, while you're at an Edcamp, making sure that you connect with people so you know how to continue those connections. Mm-hmm. And it is definitely one of the things that I am working with the foundation, that the foundation is now working on, to figure out how we can build out experiences for Edcamp participants, so that it's not just a once-a-year event. Because I think that for a lot of teachers, it is just a once-a-year event, and they go back to their classroom and their schools, and they're very isolated. Mm-hmm. And so right now, one of the things that I'm looking for funding for is ways that we can begin to build out, so you don't have to have an Edcamp, all the time, but to support building that community of participants.
Shannon, have you experienced anything like that with all the Edcamps that you've run, where, going back to a school or going back to your normal environment is just not as fun as going out on a Saturday for free?
You're putting me in a place here where I'm going to be like, yeah, going back to my school is terrible. No. Love my school. Love you. But no, I think that what Hadley said is really true. I think that, yeah, we all find, Liz Davis has this great activity that I started to do in Edcamp Baltimore called Monday Someday. What did you take away from the Edcamp that you would want to do on Monday? And what did you take away from the Edcamp that you want to do someday? And I think that that's really crucial for teachers. You might not be able to use Prezi on Monday, and maybe that goes onto your someday list. But to think about those things that you can do on Monday, and then to look at that someday list, and like Hadley said, keep things going. And so reach out to, maybe you just learned about Twitter at Edcamp, and reach out to those 10 people that you connected with on Twitter and kind of say, all right, so Prezi's out. What else do you guys use? And continue those conversations. Continue to, look for resources through not just your Edcamp Smackdown, but, every weekend there are, I used to say 5, but now there are like 25 Edcamps every weekend. Look for those hashtags and start to kind of follow them and see what they're talking about and what they're up to. I think that it can be frustrating, but I think that it's what we tell our students all the time. It's the manageable goal piece. And so let's figure out what we can do right now and kind of get that rolling and moving. But let's not forget about those other pieces and continue the connections, continue the conversations. So that way you can become an addict, because you're talking to those people online and you can't wait to see them again.
And I think also part of what the energy that comes from Edcamps is that teachers rediscover a love of learning in themselves, that rather than having to be the authorities, they get to go back and become learners. Mm-hmm. And that learning releases, that when you learn things, it releases endorphins as well. And you begin to become energized by that. And so realizing that, okay, this Edcamp was awesome, and now how do I keep learning? That it doesn't have to just be in the box of Edcamp. It can be in any number of ways. And in today's world, there are lots of avenues that you can follow once you've been to an Edcamp.
Absolutely.
How do you do that? On a Saturday, you're at an unconference, and people want to be there, right? They've left their families. They're there because of the T-shirts. And more often than not, and the pens, exactly, and the water bottles. Don't forget the orange water bottles. And so you have this idea of, I want to do this at my school. And so Could you guys comment on how do you address it to your administration of what is this? How do you do it? But what I also find is, okay, even for those schools that are successful, or even the principal that walks out and says, I want to do an Edcamp style thing at my school, what ends up happening is instead of being around a bunch of excited, energetic people, they're around people that are literally looking at the clock. And yes, instead of doing Sage on a stage, you're doing this round robin thing, but still that hour comes and union rules, everybody gets up and leaves. And I've had administrators sit there and say to me, I'm never going to try this again because it just didn't work. Or
Jeff,
getting people to sign up to teach a board is sometimes difficult. Maybe you're the energetic one, but your union is like, contract's got to go. Give me some advice.
Jeff, I actually have seen this work. One of the things that came out of Edcamp Baltimore its first year was something called Edcamp 3P, which is an unconference style professional development that happened in Baltimore County between three high schools on a professional development day. I'm not going to say what the 3Ps are because I'm going to mess it up because there are too many P names in Baltimore County. But anyway, one of our now Edcamp Baltimore organizers was instrumental in kind of planning that. And she gave a survey at the end of Edcamp 3P and said, how likely are you to do this type of professional development again? And it was I wish I had the numbers in front of me right now. It was some staggering number, over 80%, that they would absolutely do this type of professional development again. I think that, we don't put our students in a box. We can't put our teachers in a box. Is this going to be for every single teacher in the world? No, probably not, although I wish it would be. But it's the same for our students. I wish everyone could do, would be a great actor, but I don't have that yet. And so I think it's the same with this, but I think it can work. And Hadley knows this. I've talked about this with the National Association of Independent Schools Conference. I presented on this with Kim Civic and Liz Davis and Anthony McDan. I've talked about this locally. I've done it at my school. I do think it works. I think you can't be afraid, and you have to really also couch it and explain it well. I think that you can't walk in and go like, all right, here's the blank board, guys, let's go, without really talking about what we're going to be doing, showing kind of how this has worked. There are great videos out there. There are great, people who can kind of talk about it with your group, beforehand for a couple of seconds, or, Skype in or something like that. I think it's really important to preface it well, and to make sure that you're kind of there, as it happens along the way. You can't just assume that it will happen as organically as it does at an ed camp. Not to say that it won't become organic, and I will say that it's a professional development that the teachers at my school now love, and because we did it at my school, they now go to Edcamps themselves regularly. But I do think you can't kind of expect the same thing on a Saturday that happens on a Saturday to happen during the school year.
I think also it's possible to do things to support it, like having an idea board and having people say, yes, I would be interested in talking about discipline in the classroom, or I would be interested in, and then sort of filter, use those to help create the board.
Yeah, we did that at my school, Hadley. It was, what do you want to know? What do you want to learn? What do you want to discuss in the faculty room all week long?
Oh, and see, I think those sorts of things really help teachers who aren't used to taking charge of their professional development. They're used to being told what they need to learn. And so if you have tools like that to get them sort of engaged, then I think it begins to come together.
Right.
Let's move away from how to start, how to plan, and let's go back and talk a little bit about the Edcamp Foundation. Hadley, you recently became is it chairman? What is the official title here?
Executive director.
Executive director. And Edcamp also was honored by being granted 501c3 nonprofit status.
Yes.
What do each of those things maybe have in common, and how can each of those components meld together to create a better experience for teachers and students? Why are those important?
It's what the foundation is trying to do is support and enhance the work of the organizers, that this is a grassroots movement. My job is not to make it top down. My job is to sort of seep underneath and almost like fertilizer or something, make things happen that in an easier fashion than they would otherwise. And so having 501c3 status means that we can raise funds as a nonprofit and be able to then pass that along to the individual Edcamps. And the goal is to figure out what are the things that Edcamps need, what would make it easier for them, what would make it easier for the community as a whole, so that not just in the individual Edcamps, but all of the teachers who participate and administrators who participate. How can we build that community and keep the energy going? Because an energized and empowered teacher is going to turn around and be a different person in the classroom. They're going to bring that energy and excitement to their students. And so both the teachers benefit and the students benefit.
How does a business or a potential sponsor reach out to the Edcamp, and how can a business or a sponsor help out the Edcamp Foundation?
Well, right now we have a program called Edcamp in a Box, which is my attempt to make life easy for organizers, because we have polled organizers, and the hardest part about hosting an Edcamp is raising money. Teachers are not very good fundraisers. They don't like it. They're uncomfortable doing it. And so what the foundation wants to do is make it not necessary to do that. Make it possible to get in touch with us, and I will send out first a gift card for your breakfast, so to pay for your coffee and your bagels, so you don't have to go out and raise that money. And then you'll get everything from Sharpie markers to I Heart Edcamp to...
The first time I've seen that.
Yes, oh, these were my new ones. I just got these yesterday.
That's awesome.
To your large Post-its. You can get a copy of the Edcamp model book. And then you will also get the swag that will come from the sponsors of the box. Because if you are a business and are interested in supporting Edcamps, and we have, whoops, wait a minute.
Ooh.
We have lots of companies that love Edcamp, and they get requests from dozens of Edcamps around the country. And what we are doing is saying you can send a check to the foundation and sponsor a box for $250 a box, and then you can send us your swag. So PictoChart, awesome second sponsor, but they are sponsoring 50 boxes. We've also have boxes being sponsored by Zeal and by Shadow Puppet. And so they can send me their swag, and I will take what the supplies for an Edcamp and the swag that they send, and I box it all up and send it out so that organizers don't have to worry about the sort of the specifics. They can, if they want to raise more money, they can, but they can put on an Edcamp without having to worry about it.
Well, Hadley, I have to stop you there. You said that with this box, you get the handbook, you get a voucher that can help you with breakfast, you get some pens and pencils and a little bit of swag, but you didn't say that you get the T-shirts. Are the people that are organizing still on the hook to make the T-shirts?
If you want to have T-shirts, you're going to have to do it yourself. I don't have enough sponsors right now to be sponsoring T-shirts.
And so all you have to do to sponsor is go over to the Edcamp, edcamp.org, and then is it on the right side here? Is this the best way to do it, Hadley? Go to support the movement and hit this donate button, or is there another way that people can reach out to you?
Support. Let's see. It's probably for this better to have them just email. If a company would like to get in touch to do the contact one, or to email me directly, which is hadley@edcamp.org.
Excellent. And up on the website, there is a contact button with their mailing list and with the Twitter and the Facebook. There are great ways that you can contact people there.
Yeah.
We're here talking to the Edcamp Foundation. I have Hadley Ferguson on. And Hadley, you guys last year really broke ground, and you decided to have an Edcamp in Washington at the Department of Education. And we're pleased to announce here that they're doing Edcamp DOED 2015. Talk to us a little bit about the event last year. What was it? How did you manage to do something like that? And what can we expect this year? And how can we get involved?
Well, Edcamp DOE was quite an amazing event at the Department of Education. We were invited to come there and show what an Edcamp was. And so we hosted the Department of Education's employees who came down, and there were, I think it was 50 or 60 Edcamp organizers who were there and put on an Edcamp. And then the Department of Ed, including Arnie Duncan, who came down, were able to experience what is it like to have professional development that looks like this. And what's exciting is the spin-off of that Shannon was in charge of, going out to the state level in Maryland, where their Department of Education was having this, so that this idea of Edcamp beginning to percolate through departments of ed as a way of having effective professional development.
Absolutely.
What was it like doing that? Everybody, where was it? How did it work?
That building.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was in some of their sort of offices that were cleared out and some meeting space that they have. And so we were. It was there were not that. I mean, it wasn't that large. Simply just because of security and all of those sorts of things, but it was enough to model for the people at the DOE what Edcamp looks like.
I mean, and so you went down to Washington. Did you already have the sessions signed up because you knew who was coming, or did you just plaster Washington with a bunch of Post-it notes? Or
we plastered Washington with a bunch of Post-it notes because
littering.
The building board was a super exciting. I mean, that's a sort of critical aspect of what happens. And so we wanted to have, it was actually after the board had been built that Arnie Duncan happened to stop in. And so there was this sense of this is what it looks like when this particular group of educators. Now, if you brought in another 50 educators, this board wouldn't look the same because their questions and their concerns wouldn't be the same as this set of teachers. And I think that was a real part of the message that we wanted to get out, that it depends on the teachers who were there and what they're passionate about or what their questions are that drive an Edcamp.
And for more information about this, we're going to go over to edcampusoed.org, and there's a nice button there that says Enter the Lottery. Talk to us a little bit about that lottery. How does that work?
Well, the lottery is basically us looking at, I mean, if you have hundreds of people who are coming, trying to get a variety of Edcamp organizers and participants so that we can show the breadth of the movement. And so we're working on, depending on how many people go into the lottery, trying to make sure that as many different regions of the country, as many different sort of groups, so kindergarten teachers through senior, high school teachers through administrators, superintendents, that we can get as much variety in that.
And Jeff, it's tricky. When we did our Maryland one, we had a lottery partially because when we go into spaces like that. Ours was in the Maryland Department of Ed building. There are a lot of security restrictions and space restrictions and how many people can be in the space and information that you need to provide beforehand. For Maryland, I had to know my computer serial number when I registered. I was like, it's down there.
And show it.
And so it's just that's also really important, just because that type of building has a lot more security restrictions to it and regulations than a typical Edcamp on a Saturday where you can in a local high school or something like that.
Right.
Are there any T-shirts left over?
I don't remember T-shirts at Edcamp DOE, but I may be wrong about that.
There were at Edcamp Maryland, but I don't think we have any extra. But I'm gonna look for them. I'm gonna look because I picked them up, but I think we ordered just enough.
If you have any onesies, please send them up. We will take those. Now, look, we've spent the better part of an hour here talking about Edcamp and how it is a collaborative environment, how it's a free environment, how it is getting people to not see each other as, you know, teacher, superintendent, administrator, but get together. And it really is a place for friendship, collaboration, and fun. Is there any way to start an Edcamp House of Representatives or House of Senate? And how can we really bring this whole concept to Washington to make everybody get along for the next couple of years here?
Or at least
shut up because you
each other.
an idea.
Hadley, what can we do?
Senate page in high school. There's a Senate page school. Let's talk to them.
Oh, there's an idea.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
I'm still in touch with the director of the Senate Page School. Don't even get me started.
Very, very cool. You know, Hadley, we've been doing Edcamp Podcast here since 2011, and it's been amazing to not only see how Edcamp has grown, to be a part of it as an Edcamp organizer, to see where the different ideas come up and how different people are collaborating and connecting and growing this thing. As the Supreme Galactic Chancellor of the Edcamp Foundation, where would you like to see the next 12 months of Edcamp and beyond?
Oh, I would really love to just see us be able to stabilize and support. I mean, I think that there's so much energy out there, and to just keep that going, to keep people engaged. What's fascinating to me is that when I live in the Edcamp world, it seems like everybody knows about Edcamp. But you only have to take a tiny step outside to realize that most teachers have never even heard of Edcamp. And so my goal is to get the word, just to continue to get the word out so that teachers can experience this kind of professional development and can begin to feel the energy and excitement that comes from it.
You know, it doesn't take that much searching online to figure out how to do these things. If you're looking to start an Edcamp, go to edcamp.org. Go to another Edcamp. I didn't even ask you about here. Talk to us about this wiki that you guys have. Everybody says, go to the wiki. And I go to this wiki, and it really is nothing more than this little Google map with all of these pins. And I can remember when this Google map had like 5 pins, and then it had 25 pins. And the first time I saw this Google map, it was blown up to the size of the United States, and now you've literally got Saturn and Mars on this Google map, and I believe there's some pins on there. Talk to us about this Edcamp Wiki that is so important.
Well, the Edcamp Wiki is where you go if you are going to run run an Edcamp, and it's where you will advertise, initially anyway, that your Edcamp is happening. So, you know what, Jeff, if you go back up to the top and click on the complete calendar at the end, see at the bottom of the upcoming Edcamps, go down a little bit, close to the map. No, over a little bit to the left. You see where the list is, where it says upcoming events?
I'm on Edcamp complete calendar right now.
Yeah, scroll down a little. Whoops.
Yep.
There's at the bottom of that list, that where your cursor is right now, there's a view complete calendar. Yeah, there we go. And this is just a way, if nothing else, to be amazed by all the places where there are Edcamps, where Edcamps are coming up. There are 22 Edcamps that have in 22 countries around the world that have had Edcamps. In the last weekend of February and first weekend in March, if you go back to 2013, there were 4 Edcamps. In 2014, there were 8 Edcamps, and in 2015, there were 23. So this movement is just taking off, and all I want to do is just help make that happen more.
On Saturday, March 26th, 2012, I was one of the attendees at Edcamp Social Studies. And at that time, we were sitting at a lunch table, and I just happened to be sitting next to 2 other New Jersey educators, Dana Sorodiak and Billy Krakauer, and we didn't know each other. I think Billy and Dana might have known each other, but we were basically strangers. started up a conversation, and like so many people, we just looked at him. And I remember looking at Billy saying, it's not an if. When are we going to do this? And through Edcamp Social Studies grew Edcamp New Jersey. And through Edcamp New Jersey grew X, Y, and Z. And I there's no other words for it, guys. It's an amazing, amazing growth. It's an amazing, amazing journey that educators are on. I can't wait to see where it's going. And then you reach out and you go, okay, now I've met Shannon. Well, wait a minute. Shannon was at that event too. And that has sprung out this whole Delaware, Maryland connection. But then that connection, as we said, is also connected to Minnesota. But wait a minute. What's going on here? And I mean, you got to go to sleep every night, Hadley, just smiling and going, this is awesome.
Well, I think part of the amazing and part of Edcamp is that the model is so simple. It's free. It's open to everybody. It's participant run and driven. And you don't need a whole lot more than that. You just need to provide teachers with a place where they can talk and they can share. And what happens is that you suddenly find that teachers are incredibly passionate about their work and want to connect and grow. And then it spawns another one.
And now it seems very much that Edcamp has become a pseudonym for let's get together. You know, you can tell the age of a teacher because some teachers go and make copies, and some teachers still tell me they're going to go out and make a Xerox. And I remember last year at ISTE hearing about this Edcamp that was springing up, and it was Edcamp Starbucks. And this whole concept of, okay, it's 6 a.m, we're getting ready to go out, let's all meet at Starbucks and we're going to just figure out what our schedules are today. I mean, look, you know you've made it when you have Edcamp Starbucks here. I've tried. Now, look, I got to tell you, I have tried so hard to do Edcamp Apple Store. It hasn't worked yet, but maybe over the summertime when ISTE's in Philadelphia, maybe because it's close by, we'll do ISTE Apple Store. Because I got to tell you, the Apple Store, Hadley, gives away T-shirts if you ask them to. On that note, I want to say thank you guys. We have gone literally from the beginning of Edcamp to where is it going? If you have any questions, over the next few weeks here, TeacherCast is going to be putting out a whole mess of podcasts. I basically have a whole back catalog that we're going to be putting out. We're calling them TeacherCast Podcast Classics, featuring the Edcamp Foundation, featuring other Edcamps. The content is evergreen, and the topics are timeless. How do you, what do you, where do you? You know, the best advice I think I can give anybody, because I get the question a lot of how do I fund the Edcamp? I'll give you 2 answers. Number 1, contact Hadley. Contact the Edcamp Foundation. Look into doing Edcamp in a box. The other advice that I give people is spend time on the wiki, because most Edcamp websites have their sponsor list. And right there, it tells you what companies are donating $400, $1,000, and what companies are giving away stickers. And what I tell people is just go to those Edcamp websites and look at the top of the list. Ask those companies. Don't be ashamed to go to your local bank, your bakery, your pizza joints. See what you can get, your T-shirt vendors. There's a lot of different places that'll sit there and, you know, and again, as Hadley said, all you need is coffee and donuts, and you have a great time. Hadley, is there anything, you know, last advice that you can give somebody out there to say, go out there and make an Edcamp?
I think the last thing I want to say is just a huge, huge thank you over and over again to all of the organizers. It's their heart and soul and energy that's made this happen. And I would just encourage anyone who wants to host an Edcamp to join this amazing group, because wow, what a group to be an insider of.
Shannon, what advice would you give somebody as an educator, but also as somebody who has created and attended these Edcamps?
My advice is, first of all, if you haven't tried one, try one, bring a friend. Always more comfortable when you have a friend. If you don't bring a friend, make a friend. Every single ed camp has time for eating your bagel, drinking your coffee, sitting and chatting. And so don't be afraid to talk to a stranger.
Yeah.
I now remember my first ed camp, which wasn't social studies. It was pad camp with Kevin Jarrett, and just going up to Kevin Jarrett, not knowing him from Adam, and just being like, wow, you organized this? Cool, thanks. Who knew where that would go? And so it doesn't take much at all just to say hello, and try it out, and just go in with questions, with your ideas, and see where that leads you, because I know that once you try it, you're going to be looking for friends and colleagues to organize one. And then when it comes to organizing, do not be afraid. I think Jeff said it best, to reach out and use your resources, which is what I tell my students all the time. Use Hadley and the Foundation, use other organizers, use websites, use the wiki, use all of your resources to make it happen. It doesn't take much, but part of the reason why it doesn't take much is because there's an amazing network of people who are able to give you quick and good and solid advice in order to make sure that the event runs really smoothly.
There's a lot of people that go out to ed camps for the first time. And one of the things that always amazes me is that when you do that opening, I don't want to call it a keynote because we don't do keynotes, but that opening, I don't even want to say presentation, right? Because we don't do presentations at ed camp. But that opening remarks. And there's always that point in time where you say, who's here for the first time? And it's like 65, 85% all newbies. And you might be listening to this show because you're an Edcamp newbie and somebody mentioned this podcast and you're like, what is this all about? Here's my advice. Get up and go meet people. Try things. Put your session on that session board. If you want to learn about Google Classroom, just put a big post-it up there on that wall that says Google Classroom, huh? I always find it interesting that when I go, I get asked to do these Edcamp 101 sessions, which is basically Kevin's way of kicking me into the crowd and saying, go entertain the troops. And I love doing that. More often than not, I see a group of people that are sitting at a table by themselves and they have their head down and they're on their phone. And I love those people because I go right up and I say, hi, I'm Jeff. How can I help you? Why are you here? And they say to me, I'm here to network and meet people. And then they go back down to their phones. And I said, great. Why don't we meet this other person? And it's just a matter of a little Barnum and Bailey, a little dog and pony, but it's a way of connecting people because, oh, well, wait a minute. I met this person and she's a social studies teacher. That person over there's a social studies teacher. Let's get together and have a good time. So, you know, if you're out there watching, check out the Edcamp Foundation. Follow them. Hadley, what is the Twitter address and hashtag that we can follow to get more information?
The Twitter is Edcamp USA is the foundation one. Mine is Hadley JF. We also have a Facebook page. There's an Edcamp Foundation Facebook page. So.
And there's a Google page, a Google community, and I think that might be an Instagram. It's USA.
Yes.
I have one last question for you, Hadley, and this might be a little bit of an inside joke, but for those who know members of the foundation, I think they'll understand this. If the Edcamp Foundation was having a cheeseburger named after them, what would be on that cheeseburger?
Oh,
I cannot wait for this.
I was going to ask who was going to eat it of the foundation board. What would be on it? Cheese, bacon, avocado, salsa.
Now, Hadley, being that Edcamp started in Philly, would that be whiz or would that be provolone?
Ooh. Oh, it would have to be whiz, I'm afraid.
Yay! Born in Philly, Hadley. I appreciate you.
Ladies, I want to say one more time, thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been a pleasure. Please feel free to come back on anytime. We love working with the Edcamp Foundation, and it has absolutely been a pleasure watching it grow. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Take care, Shannon. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Hadley. Good to see you all.
Bye-bye, Jeff.
Well, my friends, that wraps up another episode of the TeacherCast podcast, episode 117. Thank you so much for coming on, and I want to again thank our friends from the Edcamp Foundation for coming on the show and spotlighting what an amazing resource the Edcamp Foundation is. There's, of course, several great ways that you can connect with us here at TeacherCast each and every week. We love it when you follow us on Twitter at TeacherCast. Leave us a voicemail at teachercast.net/voicemail. Suggest a topic. This actually was a topic that somebody suggested because they came to me and said, I want to know how to do an Edcamp. What can I do? And I said to them, great. I'll call the Edcamp Foundation and have a podcast. So please feel free to reach out. You can subscribe to this audio and video show over at teachercast.net/iTunes and teachercast.net/YouTube. And if you have anything to add, please email me at feedback@teachercast.net. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for allowing TeacherCast to be a part of your professional development, and I hope you take a moment to share TeacherCast with your PLN. Please join me live every Sunday night at 7 o'clock Eastern on teachercast.tv for the one and only Tech Educator Podcast, your weekly webinar. Until next time, keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.